Yeah, hello, it's Billy here from 47 Wolves, All I Am. Welcome back for those returning, and thank you for joining us. If this is your first time, we welcome back today Martin Annette from Arcanum Vita to discuss all things astrology and life in general. Today we're predominantly going to be talking about the upcoming new moon, the Pisces New Moon, and what influences that's going to have and how that's going to impact us all. And we're also going to discuss, in general terms, the lunar cycle, all the phases, how that works, how that affects us, and how we can better attune ourselves to that to make it work for us. And also we'll talk about a few life things, our intentions and motivations around the moon, but just in general terms. And our connection to nature in general, a little bit about gardening and lunar plants planting. And I hope you really enjoy it. I hope you find it informative and educational. Martin, as always, is fantastic, and I'm really looking forward to the chat. So welcome. Thank you very much for joining us, and I hope you enjoy. Okay, welcome everybody to the latest podcast. With once again, we welcome back Martin to 47 Wolves, All I Am. Welcome back, Martin. Today we've thank you. Thanks for joining me, mate. We're going to be Martin and I have decided that we're going to do a regular segment on surrounding the new moon, and this is obviously up and coming new moon next Saturday on the 10th is the Pisces New Moon. To kick us off, I thought we might talk about what the new moon means and the relevance to the cycle and what that means to us. So kick it off, Martin.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, Billy. No, firstly, thanks for having us back, and it's exciting. I'm looking forward to, doing a regular discussion with you, once a month, around awareness around the moon, or focusing particularly on an awareness around the moon. It's one of our most prominent cycles that we can be aware of. Like astrology is, as we said last time we were talking, astrology is the study of cycles and how things move in a cyclic manner around a certain type of energy and a certain nature of energy. But one of our most prolific cycles is the lunar cycle, and I guess on a very tangible level as well, it affects us. We can actually feel the effects of it, like we can see the effects of it, the tides, and I guess we're 70% water, and there's this large visible body that sort of moves around our skies every month, and we get on with our life and do our thing. But really there's this enormous massive object that sort of goes through this evolutionary cycle on a 28-day basis that we may or may not be too tuned into or too aware of, that could actually be providing a profound influence on our life, or if we were to attune to it and work with it, or gain understanding around it and that type of thing, it probably would provide a source of greater harmony for us, or at least a greater understanding of how we are in relation to things and that type of thing. So, but yeah, the lunar cycles is to me massive. I find it quite a fascinating thing, and we go through one every month. It's something that we do every month. The moon gets reborn and goes through its phase, and then coalesces and goes back to renewal, and it does that through each sign of the zodiac. So there's this, just in that one particular cycle, there's this enormous force for evolution and change and growth that's going on all the time, and it's going on in a sort of a kaleidoscopic way, I guess, where we're evolving with it. Yeah. So, but I mean, it's just, I read something just before we started, like the moon kind of urges us to grow. Like that's that force in our life. The moon is this force which urges us into growth, and whether that's emotionally, physically, spiritually, even on the vegetable level, like our gardens respond to the moon. There's this enormous sort of connection between the functional processes of life and this evolving energy in the sky that is the relationship between the sun, our Earth, and the moon. Yeah, so it's pretty fascinating. I think it's fascinating. But heading into a new moon, like to be able to focus on that once a month is really good, because as people say, it's setting our intentions. It's as we approach a new moon, or even bask in the light of a full moon, we're in some I guess, some orientation to ourselves in some way, through a particular process. So coming up to a new moon, that's our opportunity to, I guess, realize that something's about to set off, something's about to commence, something's about to begin, and heading into that, we can sort of, I guess, align with it, or even at its most fundamental level, just realize it's about to start again. Realize that it's about to flow. I mean, yeah, I guess you'd agree too, Billy. Like the life, the society that we find ourselves in today, it could be said that it's quite a solar, you know, um, awareness. Like it's very, morning, noon, night, back to sleep, get up again. Like it's this sort of very linear, solar type awareness where we're either on or off, or awake or asleep, or up or down. Like it's very solar. Like it's on or off. Yin or yang. But the moon has this sort of meandering kind of rhythmic flow about it, which it isn't linear. It doesn't have that sort of I'm awake or I'm asleep type vibration. It's got this sort of stages of evolution, I guess, and that in itself, just being aware of the fact that we do have these other forces in our life rather than just being on or off, or up or down, or active or inactive. Um, that in itself provides a greater capacity for self understanding too. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
it's interesting that from what we were talking about the other day, and what I've read before, the moon is more nurturing, so it's the softer side, so it's with us all the time, but it's not in your face like the sun, like you're saying. That's obviously a big part of our day. No pun intended there. The
No, that's it.
daylight, we do all our activities and work and everything else through the day, and we sleep obviously through the night, well, most of us.
That's it.
But yeah, that moon, even when it's out in the day, it has those subtle effects, as it does with the tides, and like you're saying, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm sorry. If you get back to just energetics and awareness, like the solar principle is, they give that, kind of an understanding. It's the yang principle. It's the active principle. Like it's our vitality. The sun. Even literally, the sun provides our vital life energy, our vital. In Ayurvedics, it's the prana in TCM. It's the chi. Like it's the vital. It's our vitality. Whereas the moon is the feminine. Like it's the nurturing. It's the yin. It's sort of where sun is active and expansive and outward and rising. The moon is this cooling, moist, contractive, nourishing, anchoring, earthing type energy. So like even in the nature of the energy, there's this sort of duality that plays out in our day-to-day lives with with on one hand our vital active energy, which is comes and goes with the day and the night, and but on the other hand, there's this evolving sort of cool, nourishing, feminine, receptive energy that's doing its evolution throughout the day and the night. And I mean, in many ways too, like without getting too you know controversial, like, but to have a pure masculine, and I mean that in terms of just energetics, like, but a
Yep.
pure masculine energetic approach to life, it doesn't give the capacity, or it doesn't provide the acknowledgement, or the the strength and the power and the necessity of the feminine. That we all tend to be geared around attainment and movement and expansion and some sort of outward expression, but there's very little capacity nurtured or orientated generally in society for the receptive, or for what we're feeling, or what we're moving through, or what we're embodying, or processing on that level. And that creates a bit of a disconnect. And I mean, you can see it in many ways, just with the separation of emotions and logic. Like it's the moon is the emotional body, or is kind of orientated around the emotional body, that they say. But like, and I suppose the sun is the vital principle. So our emotions are in a way second fiddle, or they're put framed in a way where we kind of have to maintain this vitalistic orientation, and somehow deal with our emotions or somehow kind of stay on top of them or somehow kind of work our way through them. But really, if we were to sort of find harmony between our vitality and how we're feeling and how we're operating, then that dynamic between sun and moon becomes the process of our evolution. Like,
Yep.
the fact that there's a new moon, a full moon, even just in its simplicity. I mean, in fact, there's eight phases of the moon, main phases, but like just even thinking of new, full, and waxing and waning moons, that in itself sort of suggests that there's a period of initiation, there's a period of fullness and expression, but there's also a period of acquiescence or balsamic kind of reflection. And so, like, if we're trying to be full all the time, if we're trying to sort of somehow be in our full expression or be in our full motivation, then that creates a disconnect in ourselves where we somehow might sense that we're not feeling together, or we're not kind of able to keep it up, or it creates this almost separation of our true orientation to ourselves versus what we actually have to sort of maintain or polarize into in order to be keep it together, so to speak. So to me, that disconnect from the moon in that way can lead to emotional upset and emotional disturbance and things like that.
Yep.
Like it's and I think it's purely I think it's purely due to awareness. Like the awareness has shifted away from the lunar kind of understanding more to I guess a masculine yang solar understanding, but they're one and the same. The yin and the yang
Yes.
work together, but they just operate differently, and that's the key, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, that it's really interesting, that balance. I think you're saying there, that balance between the sun and the moon, and that nurturing side. Are we not focusing on that? We're go go go, which is more sun orientated, and not giving ourselves time to reflect and tend to be still and to understand our softness as well. So
That's it.
yeah, so if
Yeah.
yeah, I find it interesting, having worked for the police for 15 years. I've definitely seen it firsthand.
Yeah.
There's a lot of focus when people think about the moon. I think a lot of people focus on the full moon and its energies, and how that obviously has an absolute influence on all of us, but some more than others in our behaviours, in how we feel. Like you said before, our emotions.
Yeah.
Did you want to touch base on
Absolutely. Yeah. Well,
touch on that? Yep.
hence the term lunatic. Like, I mean, the full moon.
Yeah.
Like, if you go into lunacy, or if you sort of lose the plot a little bit, you're a lunatic. But like, essentially, a lunatic could be said that that's the full expression of that lunar energy, or otherwise. And I mean, even the werewolf, the archetype of the werewolf and those types of things, how that full expression. If you look at the wolf, you dig this, Billy. Like with 47 wolves, but like the wolf itself, that's the animal. That's the animal kind of instinct. Our sort of, a wolf is typically, I guess, a masculine archetype. If you look at the energetics of it, which could be likened to the sun, but yet in its fullness of expression on the full moon, that true animus gets to be expressed in its most vivid form. And so, like, moon talks about form and things like that, whereas the sun is just the principle behind it. Like, so it's the forms in our life that really take place, with the moon. And so, yeah, like thinking of the werewolf, like it's on a full moon that all the crazies come out, but really it's the full moon where the spirit gets to be expressed in its truest form. And like, so really the moon just takes place or gives place to form. And that's like in nature too. Like, I mean, if you look at the growth of plants, or if you look at the forms that take place in nature, in many ways, if you look at the evolving cycle of the moon, it's that magnetic field, if you like, or that sort of that circular motion that's continually evolving around the Earth and in relation to the Earth's kind of electromagnetic field, that I feel kind of sculpts or brings form to things. Like it sort of it applies that shape and form to things, which is the feminine. Like, I mean, the feminine energy is receptive. It contains, it embraces, it sort of it magnetically. I mean, feminine is essentially, if you look at electricity and magnetism, electricity is the yang or the sun or the solar or the masculine, and the feminine is the magnetic. It sort of it draws things to it and gives it, and by doing that, it provides shape. So like, when you think of the moon going through its process, it's the process of taking an idea and evolving that so that it can reach its full shape, be seen, be expressed, go through its expression, and then be revised for rebirth or reinvention. So like, the feminine is really that formative side of nature or the universe. Like, I mean, even just in the archetype of the female, so to speak, it's the nurture that's associated with women and those types of things. Historically or traditionally, the woman mothers and cares, whereas the yang principle goes out and does what the yang principle does. But ultimately, the yang principle is only as valid or only as useful as what it is recognized by the feminine. So, if the yang doesn't bring the carcass back to the campfire, there's no point in going out there after all anyway. So it's really this union between the masculine and the feminine that ultimately leads to formation of essence and expression of form in reality. So, to me, the moon is a vital part of actually what is taking place. And like we say, Billy, if something's up, even emotionally too, if something's up, we always go, what's the matter? Like what is the matter? And if you look at the word matter, it's mother. It comes from moon. Like it's that mother moon or mater, which leads to matter, and all matter or material things are essentially, one could say electromagnetically derived from the interaction between the Earth and the Moon in light of the energy that's reflected off it from the sun. So like it sort of, there's this beautiful harmony, but the Moon plays an enormous role, and there is this enormous emotional form that is available or being developed by the moon, and like when you're in the police, like as you're saying, the full moon's when that's going to come out. So like, if you look at society, if proper expression can't take place, or if that energy can't find the appropriate expression within the context or within the constraints of society or social structure or right and wrong or whatever, if that's a prematurely formed or inappropriate, unable to be expressed or unable to be communicated, it erupts in a way that might be dissonant with the normal balance and flow of everything around it, and it becomes I guess an act of lunacy or an act of crisis or an act of chaos or an act of, or even accidental. Like it's but either way, the form and the energy must be expressed at that fullness. Like that's when it's going to happen. And so like that's why it's in being aware of that process of the moon, where it starts as an inception. Like when the sun and moon sort of cross one another, that's the moment that the sun is infusing the moon with its intention. It's the vital, or the spirit seeks form through that marriage with the moon. So, and it's at that moment that whatever we're intending or whatever we're emerging into intention commences its process. And I suppose, like, I heard it's getting a bit wild, but like I heard this thing where if sun is consciousness and moon is unconsciousness, then really we are, our soul and our vitality is trying to make evolutionary expression, or trying to come to terms with our unconsciousness as the moon grows. So like, I guess, we're conscious within our unconscious, I guess. And so all these established forms that we have in the world, as the moon goes through its cycle of evolution, we're continually breaking down our relationship to these forms and changing our relationship to these forms, and then hopefully through the process of evolution, coming out at the other end with a revised version of these forms. So like, in a way, our the moon is given to or it's associated to our family, our history, our DNA, our security or our tribe or where we come from. but in many ways you could also say that's our instincts, or that's our learnt behaviors, that's our fundamental driving behaviors. And like, that's, in other words, that's our unconscious. It's our habits, it's our patterns, and those things which we ultimately inherit from our family, or from our upbringing, or from our heritage, our traditions. And so, like, when we're born into this journey, we then are dealing with, or working through, or coming to terms with instinctive patterns, or instinctive understandings, or instinctive kind of ways of being that are set up either inherited wise through our literal genetics, or brought to us through our learnt experience of family, or conditioning of life. And we find at some point, as we become more conscious, or as we become more aware of our own identity, or our own solar principle, we can start to consciously engage with these unconscious forms that are contained within the field of our moon, or of the field of our subconscious, and engage that active process of consciously evolving with each cycle. And so that I suppose that becomes the great thing of life, I suppose. Like, we're essentially constantly trying to navigate and overcome our own illusions, in order to find a better way to express what it is that we'd like to see in the world. Like, and that's the sun and moon dance, I guess. That's the solar lunar dance that takes place every month. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sort of feeling that by having a more clearer understanding of what the influences are of the moon, right through its cycle, and how that affects us, then that can help us understand ourselves better, our moods, how we're feeling. So if we're feeling a bit, like you said, towards the full moon, our energy levels, we feel like we're going to explode, or we feel like we just want to burst out. Then there's a reason behind that. There's nothing wrong, and if you
Absolutely.
have that better understanding, and you can reflect better on that, that, like you say, and like with the new moon, which we'll talk about, that period of time where you might be feeling a bit more flatter, and that tendency to want to be still, and to take those pauses in life, and not be so full on as you are in other times of the month. And take that time, because that's that time for replenishment and renewal. Yeah,
Yeah,
reset.
absolutely, Billy. I mean, like, say, even leading into, well, say with the new moon, for argument's sake, like, that's a moment of inception. Like, nothing's really taken place. Like, it's a moment of almost awe or wonderment. It's a beginning. There's nothing of significant form around how we feel. Like, we feel something, and we have have a sort of an orientation to how we feel, or the way we feel, or what we feel at the new moon. And that might contain an intention, or that might contain just a basic idea, or even as you work with it more consciously, it should contain a lot. Actually, it should contain a definite framework, or a definite structure of intent to where we want to sort of ride the cycle to. But like, at that inception, it literally is that. It's inception. And the first quarter, from inception to the first quarter, really, it's an urge. It's this urge to go out and start to experience this the idea of this form. And so then, you get to your quarter moons, when you reach the first quarter, that's the square. That's a point of action. That's a point of, like, okay, emotionally, I've reached this formation of what I'm intending, or what I'm doing. And then into that emotional field comes this need to act, or this need to orientate ourselves some way in that realization, or in what we're doing. And usually that brings about a whole different set of emotional awarenesses, or emotional responses, or orientations to how we are emotionally. And they even call that first square, it's a crisis of orientation. Like, it's so, when we hit that first square, the first, probably 7 days after the new moon, because if we look at the 28-day cycle, so at the first 7 days, we're at 90 degrees from where we start. And so that is a crisis of reorientation. And usually that urges us to take action, or urges us to reflect, or compare ourselves to others, or draw conclusions between what we're about or how we're feeling versus others. It's orientating us. And then for the next 7 days, based on that orientation, there is this, I guess, internal tension that starts to build between what we are aiming or what we're intending versus what we're experiencing, to the point where it kind of builds this tension to where it expresses in its fullness at the full moon. And that's that in itself is a very important emotionally charged moment, but it's very different to the new moon. Like it's a very different can of worms, and we're a very, for all intents and purposes, we're a very differently placed individual at that point in the cycle as we are in that point of the cycle. And it sort of then goes on from there. And once we've reached that point of expression or form, and we've come to realize the forms that we're associating with, or when we realize what's the matter, so to speak, then we go onwards into disseminating. Like it becomes where we what we've gained or what we've grown or what we've understand, we start to be able to articulate that from a position of not necessarily experience as such. We're no longer experiencing it. We're imparting it. And so that there's a difference of energy there. I mean, these are very general descriptions of how that energy looks, but it's just to show that from one point to another in the cycle, we're very, very different. We feel very different. We're either experiencing, reacting, reorientating, fully coming into experience of it, or starting to disseminate, or we might even then be starting to draw conclusions or starting to observe things. So in other words, that's when the moon starts to go into its waning phase of contraction. But it doesn't mean it's losing power or anything. It's just changing its focus. And that's when we start to move beyond disseminating into the last square of the moon, which is what they call the crisis of consciousness. And it's like, well, after all we've been through in this cycle, and all we've professed, and all we've learned, and all we've gained, and all we've sort of experienced, like, where are we now? And this becomes this point of entering into reflection or consciousness or synthesis. Like, let's sort of put it all together. Let's make sense of all this orientation and expression and duality, and bring it into a point of synthesis. And that's really when the moon starts to become less visible in the sky, and that whole cycle starts to reach its end and reach its culmination. But it then becomes balsamic, which is the last phase, which there's very little light coming from the moon, but the moon itself is in its richness. It's sort of going into its fall, so to speak. It's in our seasonal terms, which I'll talk about too. Like if you look at it in the year type, it's autumn. It's heading into that late summer. We've had our summer, we've had our late summer, we've eaten all our harvest, we've done all our things, we've had the parties, we've had the fun, and now we've got to start doing preserves. Now we've got to start pickling things. We've got to, and that's the balsamic. Is vinegar usually is associated with that time of year as well, because we're preserving, or we're kind of putting things away for later times. But essentially that's a retractive, cooling, consolidating time. And the balsamic phase is where we literally don't want to be engaged. We're emotionally withdrawn. And I think this is where even this one phase in itself is where a lot of society might struggle, in that if you've got to work 5 days a week, four weeks in a month, there's going to be at least 4 days in that month, or 5 days in that month, where you don't want a bar of anybody. You're completely on an internal process where you're breaking down, you're taking the good of what you've learned from that cycle, and you're rejecting what's bad from that cycle, and removing it from your consciousness, so that you can reform and remeditate on and recenter and re-intend. And so it's in that final stage of seclusion, or solitude, so to speak, that we come up and reformulate and realign ourselves with the new moon. And that's when we then enter that cycle again, but having had the wisdom and the benefit and the experience of that previous cycle, which hopefully we've had the opportunity to properly break down and properly integrate into a form and a substance, which can then be reinfused by the new solar round to be carried forth. So, like, if, in other words, we do every month also get the opportunity to propagate the next month. And, like, if we call that solitude, or if we look at that autumn of our year or autumn of our month as a period of feeling not hot and not with it, and push ourselves to get above it or get beyond it or to ignore it, or whatever it is that we do in the face of something that might actually suggest that we're not flat out or full on all the time, or even just through our external requirements. Like it just so happens you might be incredibly balsamic, and it's the busiest time of the month at work, and like so there's this real contrast between how we really should be processing and feeling versus what's required of us from our external perceived set of forms. And so like that creates an enormous potential for emotional um, stress or emotional disalignment or emotional upset, so to speak. And in that separation, I don't know if you'd agree, but like in that, if you're separated long enough from your natural rhythm and your natural process and your natural movement, you're going to start to feel the separation of disorientation, or the separation of loss, or non-fulfillment, or it's going to start meaning less. Like it's like, oh my god, like nothing's got meaning anymore, because the very cycle that enriches us and provides us with meaning and provides us with optimism and provides us with foresight and provides us with the actual connection to our creative nurturing potential, we've become disconnected from it. And like that becomes dangerous. And I think
and if we
in
haven't,
many ways. Sorry, Billy. Yeah.
no, you're right. And if we haven't got that awareness that you're talking about, then we just drift along, and unbeknown to us, we haven't reset, we haven't cleared what needs to be, and then that residual just builds up into the next month. Would that be fair to say? And then if you're doing that month after month after month, year after year, in many cases, because we are as a society become busy. So I think what we're talking about today is bringing that back to each individual, being having that awareness of the moon cycles and the influence, but also that how that relates to them and it's almost critical, I would say, without being over dramatic, that we do have that awareness at that time of the month to do that reset, to surrender, and to have that reflection and stillness to then get to recharge us for the start of the next new phase.
Absolutely, Billy. Absolutely. That's the thing. It's even to the point of just simply realizing that there is a lunarity about us. We have this feminine rhythm. We have this flow. Like, I mean, just from the start, you don't have to even be highly attuned to the actual cycles of the moon. Like, I mean, that's sort of taking it onwards and upwards, where you can actually start, constructively using that energy in your day-to-day life. But just by even becoming aware that we ebb and flow, there's up and down, there's on and off. Like, I mean, we don't have to be together all the time, because it's not saying we're not together, but we change constantly. Like the moon is ever evolving. Like, like if we can just accept the flow in our life and accept that we can feel this way or that way, then we become emotionally attuned. Like we become emotionally aware, and life becomes, in its instability or in its flux, it actually becomes far more stable, because we're allowing ourselves to have this rhythm in our life, this liquidity, rather than just being on or off. Like and
if we have that understanding and self-awareness with that, and the influences that's having, that could even influence our ability to make decisions, or even put decisions off and say, hang on, not feeling the best today, a little bit flat, or I'm a little bit over the top. Let's just sit on this for a little while, for a couple of days, or
that's it. Yeah, give myself time, because how I feel today, I know that's going to evolve. I know that's going to change, and you can almost say at a new moon, in 21 days, you're going to be starting to feel like you're heading up to another new moon again. Like, I mean, it's there is a process there, so it should serve well to inform us of being a little bit more compassionate towards ourselves. Like, I mean, it's one of those things. Like, there's a potential there that for these cycles, like the balsamic period, or even the full moon and things like that. There's all sorts of stigmas in all sorts of different ways around different emotional states and different ways of being. And like, and I'm talking in extremes here, but like, say we are confined to a particular range of emotional appreciation or emotional understanding, whether it be through I guess, a solar mentality, like we've got to be, this is how we've got to be, and there's no room for fluctuation in things. Yeah, that in itself really contains or represses the emotional energy that is available to us in our life. And if we're not flowing in that, we're going to be experiencing it somehow, because it's real and it's there, and it's just our relation to it. So it may come in different forms. It may come in over emotionalism around us, or a form of different heightened emotional experience where we're trying to be a certain way and we're experiencing a different type of emotional response, and it's sort of confusing, like, so it kind of it separates us from our own natural internal rhythm, I guess. Yeah. So, but yeah, it's important to, if we can tune into that, even just being aware of those cycles, is a big start. Like in realizing there's a little bit, we can go with the flow. We can take it a bit easier. Like just go with it. And that's not saying whack on the Bob Marley and chill out. Like it's just saying that there is this lovely set of rhythms in our life, and with every full expression, there's also a period of introspection. There's also a period of quiet, and it's okay. It's okay to be quiet. It's okay to be not on your game, because it's not that you're not on your game. It's actually because you're in a position where you're more reflective. It's in a position where you're more withdrawn, because you're opening up to new insights that are going to pave the way for a new cycle. And like, so I think we may all find ourselves at various places in life, in other words, where we are in one or another cycles of our life at the ending of a cycle. But then that is also the beginning, or the period leading up to the beginning of a new cycle. And so, like, it's just how we use our place and how we use where we are and how we orientate ourselves to where we are at any one time that makes best use of that natural placement within that cycle. Yeah, I guess that's what I'm saying.
And what I love too, Martin, is the what you're talking about, cycles. I mean, that's a huge part of what we've been talking about today.
Yep.
The words permanently temporary come to my mind. That the fact that whatever phase you're going through, whatever you're dealing with, nothing is permanent in life. And I mean, the moon proves that every month. The sun proves it every day. Life just keeps moving and keeps evolving all the time. So if we're going through a phase of things aren't going our way, or we're feeling a bit tense or anxious, or we're feeling really good, even on the good side,
Right.
nothing's permanent, so nothing's forever. So we can sort of almost sit with that for a little while and go, okay, whatever I'm feeling at this given moment, it's okay. This is not going to last forever.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't define me. It is what I use to define. Like that's the thing. Like it's we then can shift ourselves into the role of creator rather than experiencer. Like, I mean, to realize that we have access to these different energies throughout the month. We have access to an inception. We have access to expression. We have access to reflection. Like we have access to all these different qualities or capacities of the moon, or even any cycle. Like, I mean, sorry to digress, but like, just when you think of the moon, it's got a 28-day cycle, whereas Saturn, it's got this 28-year cycle. So they're almost sort of to the same numbers, but one's years and one's days. And so, like, where we have these evolving mini cycles of the moon, there's this broad sort of 28-year cycle that goes around form and structure and mastery and attainment. So, like, that in itself, like, it's realizing that we are always on whatever level, and this is where each planet has its meaning, but like, on whatever theme in our life, we're in some place in some cycle with that. And like, and that's I think that frees us up in life. An awareness of that can free us up in life, not to be subject to circumstances, but conscious of our ability to use our energy or use our circumstances through application of our mind or will, or just through self-understanding to make use creatively of the energy that we find ourselves in. If that, yeah.
Yeah,
So
and
rather than,
I
yeah,
know you've touched base on it a couple of times, and we won't go too deep into it today. But the
yeah,
planting cycle with
yeah,
the moon cycle, obviously we've got plant vegetables and fruits and that grow under the ground, and some rise from the ground, and that
that's it.
all has an effect on when we should plant them, when they're fully nourished, and when they're growing at their best, and that
Absolutely.
works. I use it. I know you do,
Yeah,
and we're very similar, aren't we? We know
yeah.
when we're
That's,
escalating, or we need to just sort of simmer down a little bit. Yeah,
that's it. Oh, absolutely. That's the thing. Like, I mean, that's, I think, yeah, I mean, there's many different areas, but the field of biodynamics kind of really gets into that understanding of, the rhythms of life, hence the name biodynamics. But like, it really takes into account the moon, or it's very mindful of the moon with planting or how things work. Like if you, I guess just to summarize again, but like not only, if you sort of think about it, not only does the moon sort of have a new moon and get bigger and smaller in the sky, it's got these other awesome rhythms as well, where each month the moon sort of goes above and below the ecliptic of the sun. So like for half the month we've got this ascending energy in our life, and then for the other half of the month we've got a very downward energy in our life. So if you're planting in your garden, like if you want to plant leafy things or vegetative things, you know, plant it just before or just as the moon rises above the ecliptic, and you've got 2 weeks of this enormous uplift in the germination of that seed, which will focus its orientation or its energy on leaf production. Whereas if you want big chunky carrots or big robust potatoes or things that grow under the ground, plant it when the moon's diving under that ecliptic, and it's got this real earth grounding force. So, and the other thing, there's another simple cycle of the moon too. Like this all happens each month. So we've got a bigger and smaller energy. We've got a rising and falling energy, but also we've got the apogee and the perigee, where the moon is closest to the Earth or furthest from the Earth. And so we've got this inward and outward energy as well. Somewhere where that's those days where, say, if the moon's above the ascendant and it's full and it's closest to the Earth, like things are going to be full on. And whereas if it's below the ascendant and the moon's balsamic and it's furthest from the Earth, we're going to be quite introspective, withdrawn, and if anything, philosophical rather than practical. So like it's this sort of very evolving process. But you're right, Billy. It really does take place, and it's most visible in the garden. Like you can really see it in the garden through plant growth
definitely.
and all those types of things. It's
Ah,
awesome.
beautiful, Martin.
Yeah.
So, like obviously, the new moon approaching us now is the
Yeah.
Pisces new moon. What's the significance of that? That's
Okay, so yeah, on the 10th. So when again, like we were talking before, like with the balsamic or the phases of the moon, if we look at the natural year, Pisces is kind of it's the last. If we consider the Aries is the beginning of the natural year, then the last or the 12th sign in the zodiac is Pisces. So like the last part of the cycle is Pisces. So we're sort of coming into a new moon, which commences, energetically sort of commences what, as far as the natural year goes, this really balsamic period of time. It's a very introspective feeling kind of, time of year where the rest of the year is sort of wrapping up. It's, if we're meditating or, sort of thinking of what this month ahead might contain thematically, it's an energy that we're going to be immersed in that is about balsamic. It's about analyzing and working out what's going to stay, or what we've learned, or what we need to get rid of to re-intention for the next year ahead. So we're in a period where it's very reflective. It's very almost, kind of unformed. Like there's no real sort of solid tangibility about Pisces. Like it's ruled by Neptune, which is sort of the opposite of form. Like so things tend to dissolve in the energy field of Pisces. They become very dreamy. They become very, lacking of substance. Like Pisces new moon, we could find ourselves, on the full moon going, gosh, I just keep losing my car keys, or I don't know where I'm going, or no, it's quite disorientating. Like, we lose our routines in Neptunian energy. Like, but the idea of it though is to show us the the ability for forms to be less consequential. So we can have this ability to break things down a little bit more or go with the flow a little bit more. In Pisces, it's a very creative energy. Like we get a lot of inspiration through the divine field, if you like, through Pisces. So heading into this month under this new moon, it really does speak of a time of reflection and contemplation and I guess taking it a bit easier. Like it's very balsamic. We're at the end of a cycle. Like we're at the end of a period of full expression, and now we're working out what the new year is going to look like. What's going to happen. But to do that, we need to tune in. We're going to be more feeling. Pisces is it's very sensitive. The field of Pisces is unifying. So like in Pisces we can't help but just feel like we're all part of the big collective. Like we lose a little bit of connection with who we are as an individual, and we feel like we're sort of subjected to or trying to blend in or be immersed in the group. So on one hand, that can make us feel put upon or not acknowledged, but on the other hand, we become hyper aware or very in tune with what is around us or what's going on around us. So like, and that, I guess that sort of leads us to the Pisces theme, really, when you think of Pisces, because the boundaries dissolve and because we sort of get unified, if you like, or become more universal in our orientation. We've sort of got to watch that we don't over commit, or got to watch that we don't become doormats, so to speak, or we don't try and rescue everybody or become the savior or become the doormat. Like it's we get overwhelmed by compassion and doing at the cost of ourselves, because that idea of a self is not as relevant in Pisces. So again, it's about boundaries. It's about what we're probably in a Pisces new moon, we're going to be acutely aware of where our boundaries aren't. Like so. And that in itself is the balsamic thing, where we can look at it and go, okay, this is where I'm being taken advantage of, or this is where I'm giving too much, or this is where I'm too idealistic, for argument's sake, or this is where I'm not being real, or this is where I can't be real even. Like I'm not getting anywhere here. So how can I apply structure, or how can I apply boundaries to my life in this way, so that I can emerge in Aries? I can emerge as myself, or I can initiate my new projection, because I can create structures around what it is I want to put forward. So the Pisces moon, while it is creative and inspiring, it also, it's very confronting and very, I don't know, dissolving as well. So it's that type of time. So yeah, just heading into it from an emotional perspective, realize that not only we'll realize that we are actually entering a whole month that is not just it's not just the last few days of the old moon. This whole month is a balsamic time, and so it is about solitude. It is about reflection, but it is about reinventing intentions and being conscious of structures and being conscious of boundaries in the face of what is actually probably going to be quite the opposite. We're going to be all over the shop. We won't be able to put two and two together. All those.
And obviously we'll talk about Aries next month. But that lead in, I find that interesting, leading in from that what you just said with Pisces and the influences there into Aries. Do you find that's a natural? I mean, it has to be natural because it's there. Because Aries is such a strong sign, isn't it? It's the lead.
Yeah, it's Mars. It's initiation. Like it's I am. So like it's funny, we're in the southern hemisphere, like we're the opposite of the northern hemisphere, but like that's Aries is that kind of bell tone, the emergence of spring and life, and we're sort of heading into autumn, so it's sort of the opposite way around. But really, it's that commencement, it's the initiation or the beginning. It's the Mars energy, which is I am. It's being able to act and separate ourselves from others. So whereas in Pisces, where it's like the ocean, like put a drop in the ocean and where is it? Like it's all one big body of water where we don't really have clear definition, like we don't really have clear ego sort of, I guess, pronouncement as would Aries be. And Aries is a bit, it's the ram, so it's just that it doesn't really know where it's going. It just knows it's got to go. And so like it's that real, it's just go. And so like but out of Pisces we emerge with hopefully the forms and hopefully the intentions and the direction or the the orientation, if you like, to when we do get that jump, we're going to be at least jumping in the right direction, like, and that's sort of the year that will unfold after that. But this really is the end of the year. It's the end of the cycle. Like it's interesting. Like say we are entering into this very reflectively and very, I guess, balsamic, for want of a better word, like that balsamic time where we are, merging and reinventing how we will reemerge. The interesting symbolism around it is that we've got the new moon in Pisces, Saturn's in Pisces, Neptune's in Pisces. So there's this enormous little group of energies, particularly structure and so the new moon is right in the middle of Saturn and Neptune, which in a long sort of cut a long story short, Saturn is structure and Neptune is intuition, if you like, or Saturn's reality and Neptune is feeling. So like we've got our logic and our intuition side of our life, and the new moon's right in the middle of it. But both of those energies are in the sign of dissolution. So really, this takes that another step further into really looking behind how we're feeling and really looking behind what the structures are in our life and whether or not they're serving us or whether or not they're kind of inhibiting us. And basically, it's got that little bit of elasticity in there where we can, allow ourselves to remold the structures in our life if we need to, through reflection or through finding the more appropriate settings for it, what we want to start bringing out into the world. We've got that elasticity or that ability to restructure things, in this energy. And like, because it's interesting that Mars, as we're heading into Aries, but in this new moon too, the energy of Mars, which is drive and action and doing, it's in a hard aspect to Uranus, which is about change, and that's in Taurus. So change or liberation or reinvention of our values. So like the way I sort of looked at it was quite interesting. Is that this is in a way where we get to look at what's driving us, look at what are we driving ourselves for, like, and is what's driving us giving us liberation, or is it actually causing us to be restricted, like, and is what driving us truly represent our true self or our true individuality and what it is we value. So like it's and if it doesn't, then we've got the opportunity, because that Mars is in Aquarius as well, we've got the opportunity to make the changes or separate, using Mars word, to separate ourselves from things that actually don't allow us to be free to be ourselves, or don't allow us to step into our true self-expression and things like that. So it's a kind of, underneath this reflection, there's this real focus in there of like, what's driving me and what am I driving for, and who am I really that is behind what I'm going to use my drive for. So like it's about that. And I guess on a very crude level, it's a form of, if you look at the energies, that there's an instability around form, but that instability around forms is for the purposes of re-intentioning and resetting a new, higher, better outcome. So like, it's, in other words, don't get caught up in the chaos and the kerfuffle. Look at it and go, okay, why am I banging into this wall? Why am I coming up against it? And how am I going to, what am I really about? What would I really like to achieve? And how am I going to use my energy to get me there? And that's I think
from a crude level, from my understanding, what you're just saying there, Martin, it's a real opportunity to make those choices, to decide to go into that heart center and work out what it is you truly want, what aligns with you, rather than, like you say, if you feel like you're belting your head against a brick wall, or this is not working for me because you've gone down this path of I need this and I need that and I need and it doesn't actually align. Or you can continue to go down that path, or this is an opportunity to reflect, sit back and go, hang on, I want to go down this path where I'm more aligned and make decisions based on my heart center and what truly makes more sense to me.
That's it. Yeah. And the thing, it's not necessarily even about changing paths. Like, this could be the one where we actually filter out the noise and get more committed to our path. Like take ourselves more seriously. Like, really jump into what it is we're about and what we want to do. Like, it's sort of in other words, sort of liberate ourselves from kind of half doing it, at the cost of our own, uncertainty. So it's clearing away doubts and clearing away uncertainties and things like that. Like, it's sort of, because if you look at it on a face value, we could find us, like, if the energy, could throw us into a position where we're quite disorientated, quite tired, quite unclear about where things are going, all very Pisces, potential Pisces representation. And then underneath it, there's this sort of agitation or unpredictability or irritation behind it all as well. So not only is it not coming together, but we're frustrated and things seem unreliable, things seem unpredictable, and so that's the presentation of that energy. But on the other side, we've got the opportunity to not sort of try and go into opposition and keep up with that. We can actually get in more into and reflect on, and get into what is, well, why am I lost, or what is real to me, or where is my orientation, and where am I really coming from, and what am I really about, what's important to me, and then just use that Mars and Uranus energy to actively take steps or set intentions to bring that into sharper focus. And like that way too, we're in a way liberating or removing ourselves from the being encapsulated or being projected upon, which is another Pisces energy, being projected or trying to be molded by the world, rather than actually, coming up with a new mold and expressing that. So, it's that type of thing, and that'd be the duality of it. But I guess, when I look at this new moon, the big point I would say is, it's by no means a moon where you've got to be expecting yourself to come up with anything substantial. That it's a very interiorized moon. It's a very introspective moon, but with it, that introspection is to lead us to great clarity and access great drive to make changes once we come up with the new orientation or the new plan, so to speak.
Wow, that's good stuff. Good stuff.
That's the theory. Yeah, that's in theory. But I mean, that's the go. Yeah.
I find that fascinating. That all the things you just talked about, that and where it's heading to, and like it almost feels like it is a time of reflection and setting yourselves up to move into the next phase, like with the Aries, and like you said, you're going, but you want to do the work here and just sit with it. Nothing too grandiose or major decisions, but just reflecting, get it all going, and then like let's hit the ground running for in the next month or so.
Listen to yourself, like be balsamic, like use the balsamic phase for what it is. Like if you look at the natural year, balsamic is, I guess, it's just before winter. Like it's just before we get cold, and it's sort of that deep of winter, like where it's quiet and fireplaces and hot toddies, and we're not out doing stuff. We're sitting around and we're reflecting and we're learning and we're reflecting. So like it's that type of energy, and if we can first allow ourselves to have that access to that energy, rather than sort of trying to polarize away from it and keep on top of something, just allow ourselves to be in that energy, and I mean that could inform our relationships and everything. Like this is where, when people go, "How you going?" It's like you can, instead of going, "Oh, I'm great, thanks." I don't know if society would allow it, but really it's like, "How you going?" Well, actually, I'm in a very deep introspective balsamic phase. Thank you very much. Like, and I'm finding that, my overall sense of dissatisfaction really underpins from my inability to truly accept my individuality. But like, who's going to give you airtime for that? But like, really, at least you can say that to yourself or those close to you, because that's what's going on essentially. Like, and yeah, so and when it comes to setting intentions, like I think it does. We can write them down or do whatever it is we want, but I find too, intentionality or setting intentions, in many ways, it's formulating a no. Like it's not, yes, this is what I'm going to do. Setting an intention is being solid in many ways around a no, and like, I'm no longer going to do this because and then that becomes the driving force behind your intention. And like, we can all go, yes, I want to be this, and yes, I want to be that, but it's not until we say no to what we don't want to be that we're we're propelling ourselves with a new form or a new intention. And ultimately, I think if whatever we say no to at the beginning of the cycle, at the full moon, we are validated in that no. We receive some sort of feedback around that no, because it's the new form that we've intended by saying no to whatever it is, like no to, I don't know, like, sky's the limit. It doesn't have to be major. Like, it's just no to putting myself or doubting myself, or no to not taking my interests seriously, and talking them down, or whatever that is. But it's just saying no to that, and primarily our no's are probably directed to ourselves anyway. Like, oh, I'm not going to do that, or I'm not going to do this, and like, sticking with that, because that's driving what we are doing, and that's what the moon is here for. The moon then grabs that and says, right, I'm going to give that form. I'm going to bring that into fruition. And so, that's, to me, setting intentions is in many ways that type of activity as well.
I love that, Martin. I've often said motivation is a two-way street. So we're either moving towards something or we're moving away from something. And what you're saying there, internally, what is it that's not working for us? What is it about me that I don't want to accept anymore, and setting those boundaries. Because sometimes we can look ahead and go, what's motivating us towards whatever it is we want to achieve, and setting intentions. But if we don't clear the things that we don't want, they can become obstacles in that path of achieving what we do want. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely, Billy. And that's the thing too. We could overlook that the moon is feminine. The moon is receptive, and so, like, if we say I am this month, like, if we intend and go, oh, look, this is my intention, I am going to, do A, B, and C. That's solar. Like, that's the sun. Like, I mean, we can always be solar, but the moon wants to hear what we feel. Like, we need to receive it. We need to receive. If we're going to say no to, I don't know, smoothies or something. I don't know. I'm just trying to think. But if we're going to say no to something, we have to feel. We have to feel it. We have to agree with it. We have to receive it on a feminine level. We have to receive the idea of what it is we're saying no to, and look at it and go, if we're saying no to smoothies, we're not saying I am going to have no smoothies. We're saying I don't need smoothies anymore, because that I feel this. This is what I'm going to nourish myself with this month. This is the form that I am trying to engender in my life, and so that's the process of the moon. It's very different. Like, it's a feminine principle, and so oftentimes we're kind of thinking that we have to intend everything actively, but sometimes we can intend things passively and receptively by feeling what it is that we need, and that's important. That's where the moon runs from, because if we're saying, oh, I want to do this month, the moon's going, she's hearing it opposite. She's going, why? Because you don't have that. And that's what the moon's going to go. The moon's going to say, righto, you don't have this, and I'm going to build this for you. So we have to feel fulfillment, or we have to feel the intention around abundance, or we have to feel compassion, or we have to feel connection. Because if we say, I want connection, the moon's going to create, you don't have connection. And so that's where we have to come to terms with. We have to come to terms with how we feel, like what it is we want. And this is the time where balsamic moon comes around. This is where we get quiet and we listen to that, and we go, okay, I haven't got this. I'm not feeling it. I'm empty here. I want to fill this cup here. And what's stopping me feeling it? Okay, I'll get rid of that. I'll cut that out. I'll re-intention, because what I want, what I need, and this is the key word, not want, need, what I need. And that's that basic needs. And I think we were talking about it last time. Abundance. What is abundance? It's basic needs being fulfilled. And we should, all of our basic needs, there's no reason why we can't fulfill our basic needs. And that's the concept of abundance. But I suppose, well, I found myself, I'm caught up in a rant, but like the thing about it is,
it's beautiful. Yeah.
If we look at Pisces too, if we look at where Neptune is in the sky right now, and Neptune's very slow moving, and it sort of moves 1 degree, in a number of months kind of thing. So we've had this constant sort of compassionate awareness symbolically at the 27th degree of Pisces, where Neptune's been sitting. And if you look at the meaning of the 27th degree of Pisces, And if you look at the fact that to truly appreciate the Neptunian energy, it's about internal connection. It's a divine field, right? So our intuition is what is informed by the energetic of Neptune. So the symbol that represents where Neptune's sitting right now is the concept of abundance, and it's the concept of what is our basic needs, and why are we not allowing our basic needs to be met? And and if you look at themes around Neptune, it's victim savior and that. So we've got, on one hand, we've got this opportunity. We're being presented with an opportunity to feel victimized about not having our basic needs met, and what are being separated in through illusion or through otherwise, which is Neptune's sort of challenge around the very principle of abundance. And in one way of looking at it, and Pisces reflects this, so this is a theme for the month in a way, is like what illusion are we putting in our way of abundance? What are we putting? What are the conditions we've made up, or what's the delusion we have around having our basic needs met? And I'm not talking about anything other than basic needs, like feeling whole, feeling complete, feeling self-love, feeling connected to ourselves. That's our fundamental basic need. Because what is the moon? It's security, and it's nourishment. So we don't have to have much to feel connected to a divine system of love or whatever it is that nourishes us and grows us and helps us, empowers us to create. That's basic needs, and we're abundant in that. And but we've got to work through the separation from that. What's separating us from that? What illusion have we got going on that thinks that's telling us that we're disconnected from that? And that's Pisces. It's sort of presenting us with that. It's like what?
And
Yeah.
I was just thinking that's the importance of self-reflection as well, and not necessarily soaking up everything that's external. So your media will and your advertisements on TV, radio, everything else will tell us what we're lacking and what we're scarce in, and it's very easy to get caught up in that spiral of I need this, I'm not good enough unless I have this, or and that obviously doesn't lead to the fulfillment and the fill your cup scenarios that you're talking about. So
exactly.
It's real.
Yeah, no, you're right. But and that's the thing about Pisces energy or Neptunian energy. If we look at just the symbolism around it, like things like advertising and media and projection and glamour and all those energies, that external energies are represented by Neptune, because that they're just imagery, they're projection, and under the field of Pisces too, we are easily impressed upon, so like if you look at media and advertising and glamour and all these things, it just impresses upon us, and it's illusory, it kind of sets us up to have this disillusionment, if you like, around our true connection. And in many ways, the opposite, if you like, the opposite of advertising and glamour and illusion is literally internal divine connection. And so in many ways, our challenge in many ways in this life is to overcome the illusions that stand in the way of us uniting with our bliss. And so that's, once we project something onto the world and think that that's what stands between us and bliss, we become in some way, shape or form victimized or disempowered or disenfranchised or whatever it is, because of an illusion. So it's and that in a way, just one last thing, but that in a way is the role of the moon as well, because the moon and Neptune are sort of intricately related, Artemisia and all the myth around moon, relations between moon goddesses and Poseidon and all that sort of thing, if you look into it. But the thing about it is that the evolving cycle of the moon is one of constantly asking us to overcome our illusion. And because if we just get stuck in this repeating pattern, or the matrix, so to speak, and hence the word, the matrix, the moon, the mother, the matrix is this evolving cycle of the moon, where if we keep reinventing and keep rolling over our old illusions and our old perceptions, we instinctively keep recreating our life that looks the same for us. So that is the mastery, to overcome the illusion and in a way program the intention to change the way that looks. And that's the thing, once you do that, then you become, in a way, the creator rather than the recipient.
And you that gives you your empowerment back, rather than be the victim and think that things are happening to us. If we change our energy, then everything else just flows out from that.
That's
Where
right.
if we go after something materialistic or a certain goal, but we haven't changed in essence who we are, the moon like says, well, you don't have that. Exactly.
It'll just keep repeating it for you and keep giving you a different permutation of how it feels not to have it. It's just one of those things. And I mean, it's consciousness too, because I mean, there's nothing wrong with material expression because we live in a third dimensional existence. And I mean, in many ways, it's the energy that's contained within the object. I mean, we acquire the object, but to then, as time goes by or the cycle goes by, really that energy must be then released, either caught up in objects, or it's for us to release that energy and turn it into something else. And so, and a lot of that is our kind of conditioning that in media, we've got to watch out for, watch out for what we're told that we must desire. But at the end of the day too, it's to realize what energy we are containing within objects and give it the opportunity to be released. And I suppose not to detract too much, but if we think of, again, this moon cycle and energy contained within objects or contained within forms or contained within ideas that keep repeating, every now and then the sun and the moon literally combust each other, and that's called an eclipse. And it's at that point where these old trapped forms of energy get the opportunity to be disintegrated and released so that we can reinvent something. And that's why the significance of the eclipses is so important, because it's this sort of repeating cycle that gets a real firecracker put into it and under an eclipse that gives us an opportunity to release some form of trapped energy that's in that cycle to be re-expressed into a new form. But other than an eclipse, we can do that consciously. We can consciously kind of contribute to the expression of our lunar cycle. We can do that, and that's just, I guess, the power of humanity. We've got an imagination, and like we said last time, we use that imagination for our gain and for our growth, not gain but growth. If we use that, then we are the one that magnetically give birth to the forms that become propagated under the lunar evolution. So but if that imagination is captured, and I think this is important too, the guy that started Hollywood, I think somebody told me once, his first speech when he started Hollywood, he said, my goal is to capture the imagination of the entire world. And he did. And that's the thing, it's, if you capture if your imagination becomes captured by something else, whether it be illusion, glamour, whatever, you're putting your imagination into an idea that's going to be continually worked over and evolved by the moon. And really, are you making what you want to make, or are you making what someone else says you should be making?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. And because the machinery, the moon is just a simple machinery. The machinery of the moon just goes through and evolves and does its thing. Whereas our imagination is what seeds that. And I guess, when we think of the year ahead, Pisces New Moon, this is the seeding time. This is where we work out what we want to put into the seed that starts our new year. And so, but it's a process of a month. And so I guess in this energy, we're going to have an opportunity to look at the options that we might be looking at as to how we would like to reseed the year ahead, and for better or worse. But really, it's our orientation to it and it's our approach to it that will inform us of what we come up with at the end of it.
Yeah. And that's not a selfish thing. That internal reflection, like you're talking about, is pivotal for where we're going and where each of us our paths lie, to truly be true to ourselves and true to our heart, rather than what you said, outside influence may or may not tell us what we need and what our imaginations are. We can get very easily distracted by that, by telly and movies and everything else, but to go within and then to be in touch and to have that understanding of the moon cycles and how that reflects in on us as well, for me, just seems to, from what you said today, goes hand in hand. So I've personally feeling it's very important to maybe meditate and even include the moon in on your meditation, understand the cycles and where that's all flowing as well. Is that?
Yeah, mindfulness. You know, you don't have to be an expert on the moon, or you don't have to be, but being mindful of where you find yourself in the cycle, like where things are, and the moon's a great descriptor of that. You just got to look up, you know, like, and I mean, we were talking about this the other day, like how many people, like, not saying we don't, but we tend not to look up as much, you know, like we tend not to be in awe as much, like even with cities and lights and things like that, like we don't have the same access to the sky, and you know, looking up sometimes is an act of, you know, just the act of awe is enriching, and it's fulfilling. But even physically, like lifting your eyes up, there's a reflex in your brain that actually, you know, connects to the little muscles at the back of your neck. And when you tilt your eyes up, you adjust the way your head sits, and you hold your head high. So, you know, if you look up in awe, you're adjusting your whole posture in the world. So, like, I mean, so yeah, just oh, that's a little sidetrack, sorry, but like,
No, this is good. Yep.
It's yeah, just awareness of where we find ourselves in the scheme of things is important, because we can not necessarily feel so disconnected. Like if you feel even just the moon, and there's no, you know, the moon is always known culturally as the mother or the nurturer or whatever, but just knowing where we stand in relation to the great mother, you know, it reminds us or reassures us where we are in the process. And you know,
and even if it's not a visual, like a lot of people obviously these days live in the city where they don't get to see the stars that people out in the country get to see. The number difference is incredible, really. But yeah, like more importantly, that balsamic moon where you're talking about, you know, last few days before the new moon, it's barely visible, but it's still there. It's still having the same power and influences on us. But I like the idea of looking up and getting that visual and connecting in with it optically, if I can say that. Yeah, because that obviously registers with different parts of the brain that, you know, we can sense it. But if we're caught up in our everyday lives and the busyness and everything else, and we forget to look up, yeah, maybe we might miss that opportunity to connect.
That's right. Yeah, and it's a reminder of also too, we're part of nature. Like we're part of a system. You know, we're part of an amazing system that is beyond our day to day. You know, like it's you know, we can get too caught up in what's right in front of us sometimes, and forget that we're part of something immensely amazing. You know, like and that's, you know, just this giant big rock that floats around and does all these incredible things. Like, I mean, gosh, there's been times in my life where you just take it for granted, you know, like, and I'm not saying that it's bad or anything that we do that, but like, it's like when you do tune into it, it's like, wow, look at that thing. Like, what's that all about? Like, it's massive, you know? So yeah, and it has an impact. And we're somehow directly in relationship to it, you know, like, and I think that sort of, you know, reinstates a little bit more awe as well, you know, like reinstates a little bit more excitement about life.
That's right,
you know?
yeah, and that's I think that's really important for anyone out there listening. That if you're feeling disconnected, if you're feeling isolated, you're never alone, because you are part of that big system, the beautiful essence of nature that we are directly involved in, Martin. Like you say,
Absolutely.
It's part of us, and we are part of them. We are part of the stars. We are part of the moon. We're all intertwined, and it's so beautifully enmeshed. That we can never be separated. And too easy. Some people occasionally, if they get caught up in that spiral of feeling separate because they may miss certain human interactions and whatever's going on in their life, you'll always have nature. Nature will never separate from yourself, and that illusion you talked about before, it doesn't exist. We're there. Look up. Touch base and connecting with the moon, the stars, and
that's it. Absolutely.
You make you feel a lot better.
Yeah, no, I totally hear you. Totally agree. But yeah, no, it's fabulous stuff. Like, I mean, yeah, so I guess, I mean, if I'm excited, Billy, to be doing this once a month, and I mean, this is our first shot at it today. But I'm really happy to have been able to, just unleash a little bit of awareness around the moon, and like I hope we can, like I hope that understanding too about the balsamic nature and heading into this month and that type of thing is uh, almost a tempering influence. Like might give pause and peace and sort of allow for to surrender into a bit more of a flow and not have to be so I don't know, so productive all the time. Like I mean, just to be realize that creation has many different forms. Like that's important, and it's going to be exciting to watch as each month unfolds how sort of track that natural year. See how it all
Definitely,
rolls.
definitely.
Yeah.
Very
No,
good.
it's
All
awesome.
right. Well, we're probably going to wind down, but is there anything else that you would like to share with the audience?
Um,
We've covered
yeah,
a whole range
I,
of subjects, and it's been
yeah,
an
I guess.
incredible conversation. But yeah, go
Yeah,
for it.
no, thanks, Billy. Well, I guess just at this stage, yeah, just have a wonderful new moon, have a beautiful Pisces new moon. Like, indulge yourself in some wonderful sensory things, and meditate and pray and do all those sort of lovely Piscean activities, I suppose. Like, just try and allow yourself the ability to flow. Realize too that Pisces is the antithesis of structure, and you know don't be so attached to, not that we do have responsibilities and all those things, but don't be so attached to outcomes per se, and use it as a wonderful opportunity to reset your intentions and reconnect within somehow music and art and creativity, and indulge yourself in wonderfully fulfilling things, and try not to be too um, assuaged or discouraged or impressed upon by external impressions, and listen to your gut. Like, listen, don't if you find yourself talking yourself out of something, you're not really listening to your intuition, and that's the most important thing. Listen to that inner voice, because Pisces essentially is that inner voice. It's listening within. Once we stop chasing the illusion, we actually start to see the true vision. And like that's all I could sort of say, I guess, is have a wonderful month, and look forward to breaking down Aries with you as well. So yeah, enjoy.
For sure. Well, thank you so much, Martin, for joining us today. It's been another fascinating, educational, inspiring talk.
Thanks so
And
much,
I've
Billy.
loved everything that you've shared, and I hope those resonating with what we've talked about today, and they're getting a lot out of it. So once again, I echo your thoughts. I'm really excited and looking forward to our regular chats, and I'm learning all the time. You're the
Yeah.
astrologist. I know this much, but I'm definitely loving the educational side, and how that impacts on all of us. So thank you so much for joining me today. It's been wonderful.
Cool. No, thanks for having us, Billy. And yeah, look forward to chatting with you again soon. I love your work. Love your work. Love
Excellent.
what you're doing.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very
Cool.
much, Martin.
Thanks,
Thank
Billy.
you.
I'll
Have a
catch up
good,
with you.
and we'll catch up soon. Thank you.